Hello music makers, welcome back. In my How to Not Master series, I talk about how if you get the sounds right at the very beginning of a project, then you won't have to mix or master later. And sure, that is true, but it still requires you to have experience and ear training. For the thousands of you out there that don't have that, like I didn't when I started, we spend so long searching for sounds that by the time we do find them, the original inspiration or idea has been lost. So I wanted to show you this little trick that all the DJs I work with use so they can kickstart tracks faster. Let's go. Okay, so here's a good example of what happens a lot. The DJ I'm working with brings me references. In this case, there's 3 of them. They liked different elements from each one. The first one is Finally by Swedish house Mafia. They noted it goes down really well with the commercial crowd, but the thing they liked most was the groove, the beat. Very bouncy, bumpy, you might say. And they wanted to know, instead of that trancey lead, would the ARP from this other reference track by Hannah Wants and Clementine Douglas, would that work on the groove? Obviously, very different sounding track, but they loved that ARP. And in the third reference, the Max Styler and Gorgon City's Touch, they liked some of the production elements. Again, very different sounding track, but they liked a lot of the details, the stabs, sound effects, and that vocal effect, things like that. So the mission is, how do we pull that lot together? We only have a couple of hours left in the evening, and they'd like to try it at their DJ gig this weekend. Now, even though I can pull together sounds pretty quickly compared to many people, I still take a long time finding drums. And I know I'm not alone. But this is not an area we can cut corners with. Getting the drums right is fundamental to the track. They are a foundational element. The entire track is built on the back of them. If we put the wrong drums in now, and only realize later that we need to swap them, the entire track can fall apart. So what do we do when we don't have 5 hours to spend searching for the perfect drums? Simple, we're going to think like a proper DJ. Remixes, bootlegs, mashups. What I'm trying to say is, we're going to steal some. Temporarily, at least. In a process I like to call rip and replace, or R&R for short. So if you get the extended version of your reference tracks, at the beginning and end, you'll often find it's mostly just drums. Listen to the Hannah Wants track here. Good, good. Let's see what's at the end. Just a single synth in there. Now, what we want the groove from, though, is the Swedish house Mafia track. And that has this at the beginning. So there are some tonal elements in there getting in the way, possibly a vocal sample or something. So no clean drums there. Let's check the end. Nope, that's not going to be usable as a drum track, but no problem. This is the age of AI. Now, remember, we could put that to some good use. If you go to a website like this one, Vocal Remover, it has a mode here for splitting, stem splitting. Not sponsored, by the way. This is just one I've found. There's a lot of these and they all look very similar. I'm not sure if they're all using the same algorithm. You might want to try a few, see if you get different results. But that gave me these drums. And this section has the full kick and clap. Okay, this section here, just before the snare drum build starts. That is a loop we can use. Now, by we can use, I mean temporarily. This is just so we can put our track together nice and fast, see if the idea works, without the whole cacophony of sorrow that is Let's get this looped. Turn warp on, press loop. I already matched the tempo when this reference came in, 131 in this case. Let's set the start and end points. There we go. Let's make it a 4-bar loop for now. Now, one thing I do want to do is grab a kick drum so I can sidechain from it. That one hasn't got a crash cymbal or anything on top of it. Let's grab that. Copy, paste, one on every quarter, like that. Okay, there's a kick drum track. Now, this is going to double in volume every time it overlaps. So I'm going to split the frequencies first. I'm going to grab the free ZL splitter. Let's put that there. Put this into high pass, low pass mode. 100 Hertz will be absolutely fine for now. Linear phase mode, nice and steep. So this one should be the high passed one. Yes, it is. Copy this across to the kick track. Swap it to low pass mode. This will be our low frequencies. There we go. Now, when we put these back together, they should be basically as they were. Nice. Now we have a drum groove in which I have control over the kick drum. Can bring the low frequencies in and out, and also sidechain from it. Now, before we continue, let me make this very clear. What I am doing here is copyright infringement. We only do this for now so we can throw the idea and arrangement together quickly. When it comes to releasing the track, it cannot contain anyone else's work. That is illegal in all the territories I'm aware of anyway. And while we're on the subject, let's dispel a couple of myths. No, it does not matter how long the sample is, or if you've EQ'd it or pitched it. Someone else's recording is someone else's recording. So unless you have permission and or a license, that is copyright infringement. The second half of this video is going to cover what we do afterwards. If you want to know more, seek proper legal advice. I am not a lawyer. This is not legal advice. Thank you for listening. Back to the video. Okay, we have a working idea. Let me give you a quick tour of the drop. So we have our drums, as we heard earlier. Notice those drums have a bumpy tom part in them. Do, 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 do. That tom part. That's interspersing the kicks, and that is in the bass range, or the upper bass range at least. Now, that restricts our choice of bass quite a bit. It's going to be very tricky to get a different type of bass rhythm or bass part to work with that tom groove. So we've just gone with the same thing. It's a held respace. Different notes and different chords, but we know this will work. Just doing that. Just as I showed in my respace video, I've high-passed the respace so I can fit in a sub-sine wave, so it's mono-compatible. Then we have these accent stabs. This is a low brass stab. That idea came from what we heard in the Gorgon City and Max Styler track. I think theirs is more of a synth than brass, but it's a very similar range and same kind of effect. We just needed an accent on the drop. Also, like their track, we did try to fit in some extra bass stab hits here and there, but because of the tom and the res, there just wasn't enough room. So this is a bass sound that got repurposed. Like a swell effect. It's just an FM bass with all the low end removed, played higher up. Nice happy accident there, helping to distinguish us from the reference. Next up, we have a piano. Finally has a piano, but it's the main instrument and it's playing a riff in their track. Ours is just marking the chords and acting more as a pad. In fact, it's layered with a pad for extra fizz. So that's the piano. There's some high string for tension. It's holding the one note. Next up is the main lead instrument, the arp. So as I said earlier, the main idea was to see if the arp vibe from Cure My Desire would work on the finally groove. But that track was a lot more chill than Finally, so this is my high energy version of that. It's a similar vibe in the sense that it's 16th notes moving down the chord in a similar octave, but it's different chords and it's a different sound. So that's our lead. And then last here is the stuttered vocal effect we heard in Touch by Max Styler, Gorgon City. See my Stutter House video if you want to know more on those kind of rhythms. So those are the musical elements of the drop. We've also got some white noise and crash cymbals to drop with, crucial elements to see if the drop works. And for our little build up here, we've just filtered the piano in, the ARP lead filters in as well. We've got a vocal here. This is a riser. That should go in with our effects. Whoops. To keep the rhythm through the break, I've added some extra claps here, just keeping the backbeat going, because I couldn't extract a clap from the Finally drums. The Finally drums do come in here, but they are high-passed. I just needed the hi-hats from them. They're adding extra pace in the build. Let me show you the whole thing. Here comes the ARP and the top loop. And all together. Oh yes, I almost forgot. For the second half pickup, we did add a lead a little similar to the Finally one, this stuttered trance thing. A little extra interest for the second half, but it's tucked quite far back. The ARP is still the main lead. And there we go. Got a working build and drop. We can make a quick arrangement of that now and see if it works live. So that is stage one of Rip and Replace. We've ripped the drums. Now on to stage two, replace. Okay, so that's the important bit out of the way. We've got our idea together while we knew what we wanted and we were still inspired. Now, if it did work out live, or however you decided to test it, now we can devote that time into finding the drums without the pressure of potentially forgetting our ideas. And in the process, we can make the legal version. Now, as I said in the intro, this next bit still requires ear training and experience, which is just going to come with time. But let me at least talk you through what I'm hearing and what I'm looking for. See if you can hear the same things as me. Okay, so what can we hear inside of this Swedish House Mafia loop? First of all, just generally, what instruments are playing? Obviously, we have a kick. Has a fairly strong backbeat, what sounds like a clap. I think there might be a rim shot in there, which is a type of snare. We'll come to that later. Possibly a layer of the two. Yes, in there. It sounds like a rim shot layered with a clap. We also have, obviously, the hi-hats. There's a crash cymbal there. Let me get a clean one over here. There we go. Quite a sizzly hi-hat. Possibly layered with a ride cymbal. I'm not sure. Might just be a sizzly hi-hat. There's that tom part I mentioned earlier. That's kind of in this area. Around 120-ish. Not too distinct in sound. So we have tom, kick, clap, hat, and then there is a shaker also. which I can hear up here. There. So 16th note shaker, but it's also swinging. There's some swing to this groove. Can you hear it shuffling along? It's not, it's more. That's a very important part of the groove because everything's going to follow that. The tom, all the musical parts. So that's the overview. Now, what else do we need to get specific with? The only thing I want to copy as close as possible, really, is the kick. Seems to be 52, 53 hertz-ish. I want something very close to that because we know this bottom end works in the club. So I need to be copying that as close as possible. As for the rest of the instruments, I don't care too much about getting those exactly right. I'll be concentrating more on groove and energy level, as opposed to exact sounds. I may have to balance the high frequencies quite similarly, like that general sizzle from the hi-hats, and that's because I've balanced all my instruments towards this. Inevitably, there's going to be a little bit of tweaking back and forth later on, but the only actual sound I want to get very close is the kick drum. So, how would I describe this kick drum? Well, it's not very distinctive. It's just a very good kick. It's quite short. It's not droning. This is what I would call a diver kick. Those who have seen my tuning kicks video will know I would call this a diver because it goes doom, doom, doom. It's diving very fast. It has a lot of what I would call chest energy, which is where the tom is, around 100. We need to make sure it's got a lot of that, whichever one we end up with. And at the top, it's not too distinct. It's not clicking very distinctly. There's not a lot of smack up there. It's quite neat at the top. It's a short, neat, thuddy kick. That's about the best description I can give with my limited vocabulary anyway. So let me go away and see what I can find.
2 hours later.
Okay, we've got somewhere. Let me show you the new drop. Here's where we were. So there are some differences, but no better or worse, in my opinion. It's got it where it counts, as they say, doing its job nicely. Let me give you the tour. So the hardest part was the kick. It always is. As you can see, I've had to do a little bit of work to get it where it needed to be. Obviously, I would just recommend you spend longer finding the right kick normally, but in the time I had, here's where we're at. I used XO to search the kicks in my collection, of which there are many. I tried a few on Splice too, but eventually we ended up here. And it's got most of what we need. It's got the chest, it's got the low frequencies in the same area. It's not too obnoxious at the top. The only problem is it has this ringing pitch in the middle. And we're moving around too many chords to have a pitched kick in this track, so we don't want that. So here is my solution. There's an EQ dip. You can hear that. But I've done it dynamically. So this envelope is stopping this EQ when the kick attacks, so we don't lose any chest frequencies. And then it ducks these frequencies after the kick is decaying, which you'll see. Like that. Here's how it sounds without. As you can see, I've taken off some of the tops as well. It was a little too supersonic up there. And I've also shortened it slightly with STFU. And then after all of this, we still didn't have enough in the chest area. About 100, so a couple of dB there kind of got me over the line, as it were. Close enough. for jazz, as they say. These are the claps from the build-up from earlier. The new additions are here. I did indeed layer a rim shot and a clap. So if you don't know what a rim shot is, it sounds like this. Or this. Sometimes called a side stick. This layer just helped with the snap. Together they sound like that. As for claps, I've laid 3 again. It took 3 to get where I needed to go. Very sloppy church clap here. These are all from Kashmir. There's an airy clap and a classic, which is just a dry 808 style. Tucked quite far back, just giving the rim shot some texture, some background ambience. They sound like this. So nice snappy backbeats, a little bit of natural room sound in there. That's what I was hearing in the original. Anyway, we don't have the same sound here, but we have the same vibe. It's achieving the same thing. I found this hi-hat in the Mark Knight pack. In fact, 4 of these loops are from Mark Knight. That's my main offbeat hi-hat. I had to chop it out with STFU. I'm not using the whole loop. That was too busy and it wasn't swung. So that's just for my main offbeat hi-hat. It's quite a similar shape, quite spiky, not too long. Quite snappy. And as you can see, I only needed a couple of dB to get the sizzle in the same area. Then this top loop was helping the cause as well. I did say I thought the hi-hat might be layered with a ride anyway. That's why that's in there. It also just worked in terms of general energy. Then shaker attempt number 1. That was the first one that was close, but it's more of a tambourine, but it had the right pace. So then I tried this. But this still lacked something when comparing it to the original, and it turns out it's these frequencies, which I found in this Kashmir loop. This stuff down here. That area. That was missing when I compared them back and forth. And then last but not least, the tom. This is what I would call a nothing tom. It's very short, no discernible characteristics really, just kind of a dead hit. Perfect for that little bump in between the groove. It's actually deceptively deep though, this one. Lots of low frequencies. So I've done my best to filter those out. We only need about 100 and above. I had to pitch it by ear. It seemed to be best around this area. Obviously, this isn't playing an actual F sharp. It's not playing any note at all. It's not long enough. Just like the kick, that's exactly what we want. This is a percussion part, not a musical part. Here's how that lot sounds. So, pretty good overall. Let me show you that in the form of a build and drop. Okie dokie. So, I hope you learned something. If you did, you know what to do. Press some of those buttons that help me out. Don't forget to check the description for any relevant links. And until next week, I'll see you in the comments. Bye-bye.